Hi everyone, welcome to the last Tarot Jam of 2017. Can you believe it? We are here. We are near the end of the year, nearly going to go into 2018, another year. How exciting. And welcome to our Tarot Jam. So tonight I've got some few questions that have come through from the community, and you can go on the chat and ask away as well. Before I get into that, anyone got any tarot-tastic news they would like to share? Anything like that? Anything? Anyone got anything? New decks that have come along? I've got a few. Oh my gosh, I came home. Is this the first Tarot Jam since I've been back? Did we have one last month? No, okay, so we did? I can't remember. So I came home to a very large, I still haven't gotten through all the unboxings that I've been waiting for me. But I got the lovely Marissa Marcia Della Penna from Circo Tarot sent me her Strangelands Oracle deck. I haven't unboxed it yet because it's still in the pile of things to be unboxed. I have a very busy end of the year. I'm going to be recording a lot of videos, and we've got 31 Days of Tarot coming up, but that's come in the mail. I'm very excited. I love her. I love her art. I love the Circo Tarot. So that's come. And what else? I think that's, no, I got a bunch of stuff, but yeah, that's really. Anyone else got anything exciting that's come? Have they got anything on their wish list for the Jolly Red Man? I want to say Jolly Green Man, but that's not the right holiday. I guess Santa could be green, and I guess he could be a Jolly Green Man if you're talking about the Green Man. Okay, you're all leaving me out here. Deirdre, I got the Shamanic Healing deck. Nice. Oh, Next World Tarot is on the way. I saw that on Kickstarter. I backed that as well. That's coming. Hopefully it'll be here soon. Although a few things that have been posted out recently have been taking a long time to get here. But I'm very excited for the Next World Tarot, and I'm very excited for Girls Draw Girls Tarot. Cannot wait for that either. That's going to be on the way soon. And Tarot Astral is on the way. Alex McRae got the Drillcraft deck. I love that. Josh asked for the Spirit Within Tarot for Christmas. I'm looking forward to that one as well. Silver Witchcraft deck. Yeah, so we go. I do have the Spirit Song Tarot too somewhere. That's on my unboxing. Orosoma, nice. Did you get the one with the bottles on the back, or just the plain backs? Because the bottle back is out of print now, and I will not part with it. You couldn't take that out of my cold dead hands. I'm just trying to find the questions. If I can find it. We do, Alex. You just pick the day, my girl, and we will Sky. I've been falling in love with the Greenwich Tarot. I love the Greenwich Tarot. It's very, very beautiful. I'm trying to find, you would think that I would be much more all over this with people asking questions. Oh, here we go. Greenwich is on my list. Cool. All right, so we've had a question from Rita, who's asked, and I would love to see some beautiful faces and for people to pop in and say hello, so it's not just me talking to you guys all for an hour. So Rita has asked, I'd like to know more about using and developing intuition for reading tarot cards. So she doesn't give us anything above like the basic, but if anyone has anything that they would like to share about how they have incorporated intuition into their readings, then please jump on and say hello, and and chat. Who here reads intuitively? Yeah, a couple of people. Yeah. Jamie's like, no. So intuitively, so I'm going to give you some parameters for what I believe it is. Intuitively is someone who does full intuitive reading, is someone who does not go on memory of the card meanings. Right. So if you aren't someone who knows, like if I started flashing cards up and you couldn't like tell me what that means, like a rote learning or memory learning, then you would be more of an intuitive person, intuitive reader. So for those of you who said they do read intuitively, how did you start? Like, how do you prefer to read? Do you connect with the person? Do you connect with the cards? How do you kind of get around that a little bit? Does anyone want to come and jump in and say hello on screen? And
all right, why not? Hello.
Hi.
I'm not going to. I can't help but do accents sometimes. So, but I have every right because I did my ancestry, and so I get to talk like this. Okay. I do read intuitively because I have a really, I guess, extensive background in shamanic training as an apprentice for about 8, maybe 9 years now. And so it's been very focused on healing, and there's been a sort of I don't know, there's several methods of receiving messages that I've had since I was a child. And I fell in love with tarot, to my surprise, just from wanting to sort of bridge the shamanic aspects of my training to my day-to-day life through learning about the path of the witchy path. And then I found this amazing YouTube freaking mecca of amazing tarotness and amazing witchiness and all kinds of stuff, and I had no idea any of that existed. And then I fell in love with tarot through YouTube, actually, and that's how I found this lovely, amazing being who's brought us all together here tonight, and lots of other things. And so I didn't do what anybody said I was supposed to do and just start with one deck. I started with several that I connected with the images of, and it just happened. It sort of knocked me over the head. It's almost like I just didn't have a choice, kind of just rolled me over, and I started just incorporating that into reading for people. And I would say that, messages come through a few different ways for me. Definitely feels somewhat instinctual in terms of the responses I feel, which are quite visceral to art, to imagery. But also I feel a connection to deck creators as well. There's something within the realms that speaks to me and lets me know that I'm connected with that deck creator, either the author or the artist or both, or sometimes they're the same person. And I get a feel for their intention, and then that deck then has a personality and a voice that speaks to me. And so I hear that, I see that, I receive that on all of those kind of levels. But I also study, so that's how I started. I now have also some, knowledge of the meanings of what the traditional meanings are, the Thoth meanings and the Marseille meanings and all of that. But I'm always going to fall back to just that sort of intuitive, instinctual, I guess I would say guide-oriented message receiving. So, yeah.
I like that you didn't start, which is one. You're like, fuck it, all the tarot. Let it rain tarot decks. There's a book called The Heart of Tarot, which I have in my bookshelf over that way, that I found very early on when I was learning. So I actually did both. I learnt the meanings. I took courses and I read I went to a secondhand bookshop today and bought 3 tarot books because I am a little obsessed. They were secondhand books. They weren't like super expensive, but I'm terrible. Cannot take me to a bookstore without, I'm just shocking. So I learnt through reading and going to classes and my first teacher. But then I also learnt through the Gestalt way and learning intuitively. So I did both at the same time. And what I was using is like, I would see it as layers. And I think I've spoken about this before. So for me, there are many layers of a reading. And this is why I feel that it can take some time to become a really well-rounded reader. It doesn't mean you can't read for people when you maybe only have 1 or 2 of the layers down, or you may not want to read it with as many layers as I make it complicated. But I feel like there's a number of layers going on. There's the client, there's the situation, there's the spread, there's the traditional or memorized, like the traditional meaning of the system that it is a part of. And that is one of the key differences between oracle decks and tarot decks, is there is a purposely designed system at work, right? So it's not to say that you can't just be an intuitive reader, but the tarot has been designed for a very specific reason. They have a meaning for a reason too. So you can be an intuitive reader, but it's still got a system. It's still got not a hierarchy, but a way that it is planned out and a structure and an underlying design. So you've got the tarot system. Then you have the intuition on top of that. And then if you are someone who's done any interpersonal training, like I worked in human resources for a number of years. So then you may even have some of that counseling or some of that interpersonal stuff that comes into it as well. And we all have different strengths. So for me, intuitive tarot is one level of it. Like I will usually look at how they all marry each other up and how they interact. And I'd say that's one of my strengths. And I can kind of get the story in the big picture. And then I will go like, okay, intuitively, what else is going on here? And kind of cast my energy out a bit to see what's going on from a larger scale. So I use it as a part of the way that I read. It's not all of the way that I read, but I use it as an element. So Elaine has asked, in essence, you can't, I don't know what that word is. Was that a typo? You can rewrite that again. So anyone else, does anyone else want to talk about how they use intuition or how they built it? So that book was really good. So Elaine was asking, so in essence, you can't read the opposite meaning into it. As in, have I ever gotten that wrong or a reversal? Or Joshua, I feel like one key step to being a better intuitive reader is to develop a strong relationship with yourself and learn to trust your first instinct. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that, Joshua? We haven't seen your lovely face this evening. Come and say hello.
Excuse me.
Hi, gorgeous.
Yeah. Hi. So yeah, I think that the thing with intuition is this. You can disagree with me, and that's fine. But my view on it is that this is a voice that comes from within, and so it's really important. Then, if you're going to use that as a valuable tool, you need to be really, really willing to just kind of get and do that personal development and learn. Okay, this is why I feel like, learn what your message is and what the language of your intuitive feelings are, and what the language of that inner voice is. I think. Because we, all have different ways that we see and take in that information. And then when we are in a situation where we use our intuition, we have our own language that we use to go, okay, and bring that information back. And so there's like some self-awareness that needs to be practiced and some self-trust that needs to be developed. And, that's beneficial to everybody, I think, but especially when you're going to be reading intuitively, to be able to have a clear signal and hear that and be like, okay, I know this is an intuitive message. This isn't, for example, anxiety or bias. this is the intuition talking. And I know this because I have really done my meditation and done my inner work and done my journaling and done my self awareness and my mindfulness and things like that are useful there. So kind of rambly there, but that's basically what I was getting at, I think.
Right. So you're saying that another, and I totally agree with you, but another part of the intuitive piece is that ever poignant thing of know thyself, right? Like do the work. And again, that is like, I believe that all things, all experiences and all views on the tarot are valid. And for some people who are not on a spiritual path or don't read in a spiritual way at all, they won't give a shit about that. And that's totally cool. But I think a lot of us here are also either very, either pagan, like totally totes pagan like me, or, shamanic or spiritual. And then we bring that into our practice as well as a part of a growing, developing, evolving human being, So I totally agree with you as well, Joshua. And thank you for sharing and showing your lovely face.
If I may back onto that.
Hi, Jess! Sorry, Jordan and for Evs.
Hey. Innit. So for me, learning the tarot, especially just in general, I feel like learning the tarot for a reading standpoint for me boils down to the kind of duality of learning in a traditional sense, kind of learning, memorizing meanings, learning the essence of a card, whatever that is, and then intuition, building those up. And how do we balance those things? And so for me, what I did, I'm more of a collective consciousness kind of person, and that explains a lot to me. So for me, people believing in traditional meanings has put that belief in this card into the collective consciousness, so on and so forth. So for me, I explain that through that concept of tapping into the collective consciousness is how I use traditional meanings in addition to intuition. However, another thing that I use is the keywords that they have traditionally for each cards can become spark words for the intuition. So instead of it being, it's like the 5 of Cups is about disappointment. And so the question becomes, this is about disappointment. And then when other people's energies kind of come in, I guess I call that an energetic signature of a card. So if like the 5 of Cups for me, the energetic signature is really about disappointment or something along those lines. And then the other energies at play, the spread, as Athene was talking about, the spread, the person's energy, your energy, these become lenses in front of that energetic signature, giving kind of depth to the reading. That's kind of how I work. And it's also, you can explain this concept. For me, again, it's collective consciousness, but for other people, it can definitely be psychological as well. You can use traditional meanings are psychological spark words about a situation. And so then it's like you're inviting them to go on this psychological journey. If I say that this is about disappointment and we're asking about this question, then you have to think about how this card, how these words pertain to your question, inviting you to go deeper into it and to think about it differently. So I don't know. That's just how I do a few things.
I love that sparkwood thing so much, because you're so right? Like that sometimes, especially if you have a card with such a deep kind of like collective, because I'm totally on board with the collective consciousness. I just finished writing my book and I took a lot about archetypes. It's mostly about archetypes, the core cards. So that whole idea of like it imprinting in the collective consciousness, having a spark. So if we look at like the 5 of Pentacles, maybe for worthiness, right? Or like insecurity. And then that could like totally change or totally ripple effect if it's the central card or if it's the card that is the crux. How then also looking at how that card would interact with the rest of the cards that are moving forward. But then if you had a card that was like, oh, we can diverge from that feeling of unworthiness or insecurity into a more positive one, and how that would then react to it. So that's one of the amazing things about tarot is we bring our own things to it, and the art of reading tarot evolves and how we approach everything evolves And so I fucking loved everything you just said. Like, I totally down that. And I use the lens thing when I talk about spirit. So when people ask me, like, how do you see spirit? I'm like, it's like I have another lens. Like, you know, you can see all these different, we can see different colors, right? So for me, when I see spirit, it's almost like I have this blue lens that goes over my thing, and then I can see, because they always look like kind of bluey, whitey, like almost like too light. You know how these lights are like these weird color. So I'm like, that's what they always fucking look like. Maybe not that bright, but they always have this like blue aura. So I'm like, I can just see it as another lens. And I love that you use that from the tarot perspective too. So that was really juicy. That was aces. So yeah, and Josh was saying I call them prompts, but spark is a totally cooler word. I totally think we were thinking that you guys were all thinking the same thing there for sure. And then Sarah said something really cool. If I speak to someone intuitively, messages that come from spirit. I can't remember what I've said when I asked to repeat myself. Does anyone find that? That happens to me, and I've said on the chat for people that aren't here live, that often it'll happen if I'm channeling, I'll use language that I never use. Like, I'll rip out some word from my vocabulary. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, that is so not how I would normally talk. And that's one of the reasons why I record all of my readings. That, and I don't want someone like saying that I said something that I didn't say. But I record all of my readings so that if I'm in the moment and I talk really quickly, then I don't have to go back and be like, oh fuck, what did I just say? Even if you just jump on your computer, Google Documents, if you can click record and it'll type out your words. It doesn't understand me very well, but if you have a North American accent, it'll be fine. Or you can just use a voice recorder on your phone. Or you can use like another media app to do that. It can really help, because I find when I'm channeling, I'm like, I don't know, 10 minutes went past, I don't even know what it said. So I think that's, for those other people who are saying they were conduits and who've experienced that, that seems very, very common. Yeah, so like not in my syntax, I know it's coming from somewhere else. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. And then I really loved what Deirdre was saying, that Deirdre, did you want to jump on and say anything about how you blend the different systems? Do you want to come and say hello? She's going to be like, no.
Okay. Unmute. Okay, is this working?
Yes, hi.
Hi, everybody. As far as being intuitive, from the time I was little, I've always just known things I can't know. And it's not even like I hear it or see it. I open my mouth and something comes out and people say, how do you know that? I'm like, I just do. I don't know.
That person, baby.
Yeah. Well, when I was a baby, my mom tried to do those. What are those? Are they Zener cards? What are the cards with the wavy lines where you test your ESP? My mom got those thinking I have a psychic baby. I'm sure she was going to have a TV show or something like that. So she tried to test me, and I always got them 100% wrong. So I know that was my guides being like, no fucking way are we playing this game. Because statistically, you couldn't get them all wrong, even if you guessed. I always got them. So anyway, so that's how my guides work. They're like, no, we're not playing with that. But my mom also read tarot. Tarot was in my house forever. So I grew up reading Rider-Waite. And so those were the symbols I was used to. Later on, began reading Thoth, and a lot of people say, talk about the systems. It's a very different system, and a lot of the cards have different meanings. If you look at them, some of them, to me, feel almost incompatible. Sometimes I can see, well, maybe this or that. Sometimes it feels very incompatible. But where the intuition comes is I don't read the card like this when I'm reading Thoth and like this when I'm reading Rider-Waite. It's all in my head, and it's all, it just depends on the situation. And that's one of the things I like about reading different systems and reading a lot of different commentary from different people about what they think a card means, because then whatever I'm working with has all of that to draw on. So I can pull, I can be reading with a Rider-Waite, just like traditional Rider-Waite, and look at it and know that right now, this is not what my Eden Gray book would say. This is going to be, what the Book of Thoth would say. This, it's just kind of, you put it all in there, and the right things come up at the right times. And then sometimes it's none of the above. Sometimes it's more about the picture. And I might even have kind of those arguments with myself, like, that's a really way out way of thinking about this. But sometimes it's just right. And I think that kind of comes with reading for enough people and getting enough feedback that you learn, because your first thought is like, no, that's not what anyone ever told me this means. That can't be right. But when you practice and you read for people, it's one of the reasons why I really like reading for you guys, because you guys will be like, that's a really wild way to read that card, but I can see this. Whereas someone who doesn't really, read tarot would go, okay, because they don't know that what you just did was unusual. And so I love the feedback from someone that might be able to say, that's a really different way to read that card, but I see how you got there, or maybe even push back and say, I don't see how you got there. But so as far as what I was saying with the different systems, I know some people will say, when I read Rider-Waite, this is how I read. When I read Thoth, I have to think. But to me, that's just never. It's all of this stuff that I have to draw on. So all of the studying, all the YouTube, all the books just feeds it and gives it the ammunition for when the time comes.
I love that. I'm very similar. One of my favorite decks, and I just found that one of my crystals must have scratched one of the cards because it's got like an indent. It's the reason why I buy doubles of some decks is the Liminal Tarot, and I'm really sorry guys, it's out of print, so sorry to like make your tarot drool, but it is based on the Thoth system. So you've got Fortuna, Adjustment, and the Angel instead of Judgment, Justice, and the Wheel of Fortune. But what I like about the way that Penelope has done this is that you can still get a lot of any of those systems. You could, any of the major tarot systems in this, because it's not as, I guess, it's a little bit more fluid, and I like anything fluid. But yeah, so I totally get that, because I read Marseille. I have got the Visconti Forza. I have Thoth decks. I have Rider-Waite Smith. But I totally, the bones of my education was definitely, I started with the Rider-Waite because there's a lot more out there on it. When you read most books or websites, it's probably going to be mostly Rider-Waite Smith unless you go looking. But that's really, I like that. It's like it just adds on, and that's why I'm sure I'm not alone with notebooks full of notes on things and underlines and like different understandings of like the context of a card in a certain reading and all that sort of stuff. And I love that your guides were just like, nope, nope, we're not playing this game. I think that's pretty cool. That's aces.
Now, it seems like, you can study different systems and really add meanings to kind of like the meaning bank and kind of mix and match and go from there. And sometimes you can be intuitive in the moment. But I was wondering if anyone else had an experience in which you get a really powerful intuitive hit off of a card in a reading or something, or even when you're studying. And I don't know, it really affects the meaning of the card for you. Because for me, that's happened particularly with two cards. One is the Three of Swords, and I told Ethany this entire story. Like, there's a whole big story behind it. But and then the other is the Five of Pentacles. One time I was doing a spread, and like it was really about like a poverty mindset, and that really like affected my personal meaning of the Five of Pentacles, and always has. So I don't know if that's happened to anyone else, adding from just the intuition from really impactful moments, and that just really impacts the meaning of the card for you forever, I guess. Anybody else?
I was going to say, I've actually had a very similar experience with both of those cards. And when I am doing an intuitive reading, which, this is how I do my readings, is I sit down, I play out the cards, I have my little notebook, and with one color pen, I just write what I'm seeing and experiencing and feeling and thinking in that moment. And sometimes my hand kind of takes on its own experience and it's writing stuff that I'm like, okay, that's nice. Doesn't have to do with the card, but for some reason I need to write this down. Then I go back through with my giant shadow book, my giant shadow book that I spent like writing down each of the meanings from all the books that I have. I go and I look in there, and whatever sentences are just popping out at me, that's what I write down in the other pen. That's the information that comes strictly from the book, strictly from what tarot says it's supposed to be. And then I kind of create kind of a mesh of both of those with my final my final words to the person. So yeah, that's how they can kind of have their own meaning suddenly pop out at you intuitively, but still having some of the backing of the original meaning shared as well. So yeah, floating head Sam tonight.
So you know what, Sam? I still do that to this day for myself. Like if I'm reading for myself and I'm like, can't quite take off the tarot reader hat, or like I'm too close, I do that. I'll pick up a book and I will be like, what is popping out on this? And then usually I get my guides going, that's what we were trying to tell you, you dumbass. But like sometimes I need the book to like just for myself because I can't get out of my own way. But yes, totally, I do that too. And that's a really good way to get the clairs moving. So like if you are stuck, go read something inspiring and see what jumps out and see what you can add again, then add to your tool belt later, especially if you've had a personal experience with that card. Nothing like cementing that if you have had a card that has really come up in a really cool life way for you. Yeah.
Because I read on the hotlines, I often have to, what I do is it's just a straight up psychic reading and the cards simply focus context. So that's what will happen for me if I'm reading on the hotlines. If I'm not, if I have a face-to-face client, I'll use a whole bunch of different kinds of, there might be a little numerology, there could
Is everyone else still there? Did Alex just drop off? You're all still here? Oh, there we go.
I'm still good.
Alex, you just dropped out, honey. You want to try again?
Oh, did you know?
Mercury retrograde. No, it was just the you flick it on and off.
Oh, okay. All right. So what I was saying was the cards are a scrying tool for me, and because I read on the hotlines, it's often a straight up psychic reading, and the cards just set the context. And it may be different if I'm doing a face-to-face reading. There could be different aspects coming into play. So did everyone hear that? Okay, good. All right, that's all I had to say.
Thank you for trying again. Yeah, that's great. And again, like it's all going to be the way that we personally do it, the situation, how we're reading. If we're doing a face-to-face even can be different to the way that we work intuitively with someone who is remote. Because face-to-face, you can even have that person then interacting in an intuitive way and ask them what they feel or think or see, or have they had any experiences with the cards, So, so it's very, it can be very, very powerful in many ways to use your intuition. And I don't feel like that stuff I feel like intuitive work never really stops either if you are on a spiritual journey. I think that's just something that you learn you keep going and you keep diving into. So, so many things on the chat tonight too. Cool. So does anyone else want to add anything, or before we move on to the I'm sorry, until we move on to the next question while I try and find it.
I guess I'll go. I'm kind of a little bit sick, so I'm sorry, guys. If
Yeah, I'm sorry. You can go.
Okay.
I was saying I'm sorry you're sick. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll shut up now.
No, it's okay. I'm fighting a cold at the moment, so I apologize if I sound really congested over this connection. But I think if anybody wants to really start, because, as everybody said, the foundation of the meanings are really important. But one of the things that I really love to do to kind of jumpstart my intuition is definitely the imagery of the deck. And I feel like having that connection to the imagery is another layer to add on there and is very important. And kind of our own experiences too add a layer onto, like, it just keeps layering on and on and on. But our experiences lend to what gets prompted by our intuition when we look at imagery. So one of the examples that I give to somebody who's like, kind of new and wants to learn a little bit more about it is, okay, if I show you a card with an apple on it and I show it to two different people, the first person looks at the apple and immediately thinks, okay, apple a day keeps the doctor away. They think health, they think vitality, they think, all of these different things associated with how the apple presents for them. But then maybe person two was read fairy tales growing up and they immediately think, Snow White, poison apple, betrayal, which is hugely different from person one's point of view. However, they're both looking at the same card, which just has an apple on it. So, our intuitive bank, if you will, with imagery, I think is kind of, as you mentioned, Ethany, kind of a lifelong pursuit of additional meanings that we ourselves, as we go through life and we experience things and we interact with things, we dump more meanings into this bank that we're able to draw and fish from, which makes it really unique to go to a bunch of different readers, right? Because we're always going to get different experiences and different messages, but still, I feel like the messages we need to hear. Oh, yeah.
And that was very much part of the reason why I said what I said with that little post saying there's room for you in the tarot community. We are all going to sit in space differently. We are all going to come to the cards differently. We are all going to hold their energy for our clients differently. And the way that I read the cards is going to be very different to the way that other people do. So, and I've had many readings from professionals, from friends, from students in the past, and we all have something that we bring. So, which is really encouraging from a perspective of inclusion. So that's right. We all have our gifts for a reason, and we all have different ones too, different strengths. Yes, exactly right. There's so many ways to listen, hear, and feel, for sure. Yeah. It reminds me of the research. No. Yeah, totally. So does anyone have anything they would like to talk about or chat about or ask?
I just wanted to say that we talked a lot about our intuition, right? But I always like to give a disclaimer to the person I'm doing the reading for to say, hey, this is a moment where you're going to have a lot of thoughts flood you. So really listen to the ones that are emotionally just really hit you, to hear your defenses as well as where your intuition is coming through in those thoughts that pop up while I'm doing the reading. So just saying that as well to get them in that mind space.
Yeah, that's another reason I really love recording everything that I do as well, because I'm like, I'm going to talk really quickly. I talk really quickly anyway, but I'm going to talk and then, listen to it and then go away, kind of digest it a little bit and come back, like listen, because there's, layers. Like it may not be like, this thing doesn't make sense. Oh, okay, it makes sense now. So, but I agree. It's important. I agree with you. And Joshua was saying it's important to do that and create space for a querent. So that's a really good discussion point. How do you feel is the best way, or what are some of the ways that you create space for your clients when they come to you, even with, if that's you're doing it via the telephone or via email or via face-to-face or Skype? How are some of your ways that you either prepare a client or create space for a client? Does anyone want to jump in and say, yeah, go for it, Joshua?
I think it's just really important to, first of all, you have to have that introductory discussion with who you're reading for, and you need to be aware of their level of familiarity with what you're doing too. So if it's someone who's never had a reading, you need to be, really upfront about your ethics. You have to be really, really upfront about your process and let them know this is my style. This is how we do things. Make sure there are no uncertainties for them so that they're comfortable going into that, and then they're comfortable to interact once they know what to expect. If it's someone you've read for before, someone who is had readings before, maybe from somebody else, you don't necessarily have to break it down as much, but you still need to be really aware that they know what to expect from you. And then you need to also be stopping, and whether you're doing it face-to-face or whether you're doing it via Skype or by text or messenger, or you need to have, even by email, I say you need to have an opportunity for them to react and give input and be willing to take that and accept that you're not in charge. You don't have total ownership of that reading in that moment. It is you and them together that are creating this. So they need to have an opportunity to say something. They need to have an opportunity to react, and you need to give them a space to do that. You need to give them the time to do that, because this is about them, and this is about their needs and their process and their journey. So to be a good guide, you need to say, okay, stop for a second. Does anything jump out to you? Is there anything that maybe I'm saying that you might, doesn't really gel with you, but the image on that card maybe gels with you? And then let them kind of direct to and give you some reactions, and because they can be receiving messages too throughout this process.
Right, so that's very much around a type of reading that would be a co-creative reading, where you would, because I know some people will say welcome, and we'll be like, okay. So one of the high priestesses in Australia, that's my friend, she will say, come in for the reading, this is what I'm going to do. I'm also not going to look at you for the entire time I'm channeling messages. I'm going to purposefully and very intentionally not look up. I'm going to be connecting with my guides. I'm going to be looking at the cards, and I will look at you once I've finished channeling, but while I'm channeling, I'm just going to be looking at the cards. So don't feel as though I'm ignoring you. And then she will go into the reading. She'll carry out her ritual and go into the reading. And then she'll stop and say, okay, so what resonated for you? And then enter into the dialogue with the person, ask questions. And I know people who wouldn't even ask someone for feedback. So, but I I do feel that there is validity in both ways, but I do absolutely agree with letting your client know upfront what kind of reader you are and what they're going to get from you, so they are not shocked that because some people want to come and want someone who's going to be a predictive reader and will be like, tell me when I'm going to get married, or tell me when I'm going to have babies, and tell me if I'm going to get this job. I read all day, folks, so I get a lot of those. So it's some people want that, other people, and then if you try to guide them on a more guided or intuitive or counseling or spiritual reading, they're going to be like, what the actual, because they've never had a reading that way. So I guess it's an interesting conversation around how you set space and how you make it very clear that you what kind of readings you do and what kind of readings you're comfortable or not comfortable with. And there are some very famous tarot authors who will total co-creative readers and will only read in that manner, who will ask questions and lead the querent on their own journey, and don't read predictively very much at all. So yeah, it's a very interesting, and this thing, isn't it? We do everything differently, but I'm totally with you, Joshua, about having and letting them know up front, what kind of reader you are and what you offer as regards to service.
For me, I think it's about just consciously acknowledging that I am in an energetic exchange with another person. And that can sometimes be an emotional exchange, a spiritual exchange, like let's get real and talk about real shit exchange, like whatever that means. There's some kind of energetic exchange in between here. So I need to be empathetic towards that and sympathetic towards that. And so generally I feel like just that, realizing what my purpose there as a reader is to serve this other person, even just in that kind of mindset, will naturally let the space really unfold. Like as long as I present myself and my services in a way that is authentic to what it is, helping this other person, then the rest of it will kind of unfurl, I think, in my experience. And sometimes sometimes that happens in a way that I'm very collaborative in the reading, and sometimes it's me talking to the person for half an hour. I don't, it just depends.
I really love that focus on compassion and empathy. It is so, so vital in my experience. I trained in emotional freedom techniques, which is all about just holding space and really paying attention to the client's cues with their process. And it's very important to pay close attention to those cues to make sure that this space remains safe, because people can get into some pretty deep shadow material. And I don't see tarot as terribly different from that. Really, can, at least for me, can be quite a journey. And I try to communicate that up front. I love that message of being really clear up front of what your style is and what you're offering, and really listening to the clients, or I guess in tarot case, querents, questions and kind of where they are. I just think that's such a beautiful thing, to have a compassionate approach.
And that can be something that I found that is something for people who've been reading for a while, or it's very easy to have compassion and kindness and hold space for people when it's something that you feel you can support them on. It gets really hard when you're reading for someone who's doing something dodgy, or when you're reading for someone who you've never experienced that, or comes from a very different culture who doesn't believe in certain things, or is struggling to understand their part in it, who is, there's a lot who is, habitually not going to kind of take on, it's like, for example, I'll give you an example. So I have clients that I see quite regularly. What if this client is constantly coming back to me with the same thing, because they don't want to do the work, they just want to have me tell them that, you can not do the work and get everything you want in life. And some people are really lucky like that. There are some President of the United States of America. There are some people who never have to do any spiritual work and rich and powerful. But, for the most people who are coming to a reading, or that do end up in these cyclical patterns, that, they don't want to necessarily do the work. Or what do you do when someone comes to you about a subject that you find very difficult, like euthanasia or abortion, or divorce, cheating, drugs, alcoholic abuse, mental illness? Like, as Susan said, there is some really, really hard stuff that can come up as a reader, especially if you do this professionally. I have heard everything, I think. I don't think anything would shock me anymore. I have heard everything. And your job as a professional is to still have compassion and hold space, and not be a judgmental fucking asshole to people who are coming for help, even if you do not agree or understand completely what they're going through. And sometimes the best thing you can do is, if you don't know how to handle that, is to refer them on, or to be really honest with them and say, this is not something I feel comfortable with. But remember, like, compassion is always easier when we see ourselves in the other person, when we can hold space for them. But compassion, always compassion and no judgment, even if it's something you're finding very difficult. And maybe there's something in that for you too. If you're finding that you're struggling, or you're finding you can't have compassion for them, there's got to be something in that for you, a judgment that's being held up a mirror. So yeah, I think sometimes it can be easier to do all the like, yay, and then you get a really hard one like Josh was saying, or a recruit who wants to be with an abusive partner. Dude, so many times. So yeah, some interesting stuff there on the kind of the depths and complexities of holding space and compassion.
For me as well.
It's okay to be in a gym. Oh, go ahead.
No, really, go ahead. I've already stepped on you once.
I was just gonna say something quickly, which is that I'm just blown away by the succinctness of what Ethany just said, because I trained in emotional freedom techniques. I have 3 advanced certificates. It took a few years to get to the point of being able to hold consistent space. And let me tell you what, the first 8 or 9 months straight was dealing with my own shit and Shadow City and clearing enough of my own charges first so that there was enough space that, okay, if there's going to be a bit of process on the back end where people don't see it, I can breathe and do that at the same time as I am holding safe space for the person. That did not come immediately. That took a while.
Yeah, what I was going to say, and that was really a beautiful experience, by the way, was that for me it's about authentic compassion. So if what you're doing is, we can't confuse compassion with being nice, because it's not the same thing. It has to be authentic compassion. So it has to go all the way down, deep through everything, past your ego, past theirs. It has to be really your genuine care for that other person. And so if that means that your genuine care for that other person is, you need to go see, I cannot do this reading, that's not within my realm of doing things, or whatever, or when someone comes to you with a really difficult question, or something that's really difficult to answer, it's about taking it into the journey together, or however you want to frame that. It has to be really what is best for your client, and you doing what is best as possible, and telling them in ways things that they don't want to hear, things that they don't want to listen to, and because that's really if you really feel that way, it has to be what's best for them. You have to do what you feel is best for your client. And so that's what's really having compassion about it, not just telling someone what they want to hear, not just being nice about it, not letting someone get a pass for not doing the work. It's about honoring really them as a person, as they're coming to you with their needs. You're honoring their need, them as a person, even better sometimes than they know themselves. And so it's really, I think that compassion has to go deeper. It has to go past nice. It has to be authentic and real.
Just sounds like you dropped the mic.
Steady. When I was in India, the dasas, they said that the dasas at the temple I was in the journey getting initiated in said that 80% of suffering is resistance. And what I found was fascinating is how culturally they had a very difficult time being nice to the Western predicament, really understanding the situation of what's going on here for us. It was very difficult for them to understand that and be nice. But the practice of compassion was a very different thing. And I just think that is such an important point to really make a distinction between what is compassion versus what is being nice. And I think also what is compassion versus what is empathy. And the way I look at it is, compassion is I stay where I am while being with you where you are. I'm not leaving myself to go where you are. And that means I don't have to be able to relate, because compassion isn't really about being able to relate. It's being able to recognize the humanness in everyone and really be unconditionally loving, even if you're looking hate straight in the face.
Yeah, I actually, I'm a theater nerd. I was studying a movement technique based off of transcendentalism, and it's had to do with like the distinction between connection and empathy, and there was another really word, and it's like these things seem really similar. Connection, empathy, these seem like very similar things. But connection was something that comes from you to another person. Empathy was something that you allow from another person to really like come into, like, you really, it's about that energetic exchange between you two as an individual. But anyway, just wanted to share that little tidbit.
We got deep, yo. We got real deep tonight. We got deep dish tarot pizza up in this tonight. Sitting here going like, yeah, this is like really like, I feel like the only way this could have been any better is if I was a little bit, you know, like the dude and be like, yeah, woo, yeah. That was some such good stuff though. Holy shit, like amazing. And I love that what you were saying about I'm leaving where I am, like it is totally true. It's just like, it's, if you can, and if you find that's difficult, or if you're just starting out reading professionally and you're worried about getting some of these tricky situations, just imagine that you're meeting someone. You can do a visualization where you're meeting someone on a park bench, a neutral place, right? Like you don't, if you're reading in a space that is like your own space, well, I'm going to go and meet them somewhere else, which is why, another reason why I like my ritual, because it takes me to a place where I'm not in my sassy, well, sometimes the sass comes in, but that's just my language. But like I'm not sitting in a space where I'm like me. I'm connected to and or just there for that person completely. So and Joshua, yes, absolutely, keep in mind, so many people who come to a reader in pain or distress, just being aware of this is helpful. Very, very true. A lot of people do come to readers, healers, specialists when they are very much in distress, when they are vulnerable, and when they are really looking for help. So absolutely. So we got a 5-minute warning, everyone, for the chat. So is there anything anyone wanted to close out on or add to? Oh, I like this. If Matt Kahn said, if you wouldn't say it to a 5-year-old in pain, get rid of it. Whoa, that's powerful. I'd like to see someone make mine's not even 5, but I'd love to see someone make my kid upset. They would be like, whoa, Mama Bear would not be happy. That's a good point. Yeah, and I think there's also something to be said in that around, like, just even being in a community, right? Like, we don't have to throw shit at each other all the time just because we don't maybe read the same way or agree, or we see things differently, or we have different things. It's like, we don't need to throw shit at each other all the time. Just saying. Because, yeah, just be nice. That's right. No need to be cannibalistic. Absolutely. Yeah, so we got Corey, I also think it's assessing the needs of the client. I've had a client where she really needed me to say, get the fuck over it. Yeah, sometimes people are going to need you to call them out on things, but I feel like you will, that again is like that level of like, how well do I know this person, and what can I say, and what do they really need to hear? Sometimes people will. So it will totally depend on the client. And Joshua just said, and it's all in how we frame it or how we say it. Sky saying, I'm that person that needs it harsh. Yep. I like some things harshly and I like some things not so harshly. If I want someone to get me to exercise, I want commando, run fatty, like that's what I want. Like for working out, I want like The Rock to be like yelling at me, like, you know, like that kind of thing. But other stuff, I'm like, no, I don't want you to sugarcoat it, but I don't want you to be mean. But I totally get that. Yeah, like sugarcoating things, totally. Some people just are not built that way. Just give it, you know, some people just want it straight. So, and that's the other thing about finding a good reader is, and what's great about things like YouTube and a community is that you can find someone's language and get to know them a little bit better before you book or whatever it is, because you're going to kind of know what you're going to get. Like for me, there should be, I could put something on the website, I guess, but, you know, don't come to me if you want someone to be all like, it's all going to be fine. pat you on the head and off you go. I swear all the time. It's like, I'm going to be pretty straight with you. So Caesar was saying, I have a masterful way of asking questions in order to call something out in a reading. It's a less confrontational in key areas. Yes, I would say that I definitely do that. Alex was saying, I struggle with being kind when maybe I should not be so kind. I edit to be kind or polite. In the end, I should just blurt. Yeah, and it's sometimes hard if you're doing things like via online or phone or whatever, and you can't really see that person. So yeah, I think it's just that that's right. We all have things that we balance with.
Side note, sorry.
Get the shit out of me.
Side note, I just wanted to say that I don't think in my reading with you cursed once, and now I'm a little bit upset about it. Have you ever heard that from a client? Curse more.
Next time we're going to get a double dose of cursing. How does that sound?
That's right. Put the air on. Rustica, you need anything else?
Yeah, next time I'm definitely going to double down on the cursing for you. Just for you. Profanity, a sprinkling of profanity. I say this shit with love. Fuck off. I think the accent helps a little bit, right? Like I can probably say a few things and people are like, oh, you're endearing. You go back to Australia and everyone's just like, yeah, she sounds normal. Oh, funny. All right, my beautiful souls. It's 1:15. Thank you for the chats. Looking forward to next serving a deep dish taro pizza. Yeah, that's our hashtag for tonight, Jamie. Deep dish taro pizza. And thank you so much. I'm going to pop this up on through the replay. You will rock my socks. I'll see some of you at the Coven Call next Monday, and the rest of you I'll see in the new year. And keep showing up on the group and being amazing. And I love your faces. And have an amazing night.